Okay, so we've all heard that the Mediterranean diet is great for us, right? But what if there was a greener version that could be even better, especially if we're keeping our brain sharp as we get older? Well, a new study is pointing in that exact direction, suggesting it could be a really powerful tool against cognitive decline. And today, we're going to break down exactly what that means.
You know, it's a concern that's on a lot of our minds. But what if the secret to a sharper mind in our later years isn't some miracle pill, but something as simple as what we put on our plate? That's the really powerful idea we're diving into here.
So, for a long time, scientists have been on this quest, right? Trying to figure out how our lifestyle choices, especially what we eat, impact our brains as we get older. And in that search, one diet has consistently stood out from the crowd.
And you've definitely heard of it. I'm talking about the classic Mediterranean diet. You know, loaded with fruits, veggies, fish, and lots of good olive oil. It's basically been the gold standard. I mean, tons of studies have connected it to slower brain aging and a lower risk for things like dementia. But here's the kicker. What if we could kick it up a notch?
And that's where this new player comes in, the green Mediterranean diet. It's basically an enhanced version of the classic. So what exactly makes it so green? Let's take a closer look. Okay, so at its heart, the green version takes all the stuff we already love about the Mediterranean diet and just supercharges it with even more plant-based fuel. It puts a huge focus on these things called polyphenols. Now, all you really need to know is that these are super powerful antioxidants that you find in plants, and their job is to help protect ourselves from damage.
So this is where you can really see the difference. The foundation, totally the same, but the green diet makes 3 big changes. First, it cranks up the plant-based proteins. Second, it really cuts back on red and processed meats. And third, like we just said, it puts this special spotlight on those foods packed with polyphenols.
All right, so what are these polyphenol superstars we're talking about? Well, the study zeroed in on 3 specific things: daily servings of green tea, a handful of walnuts, and, get this, a shake made from a pretty unusual aquatic plant called Mankai. You might also know it as duckweed. And yeah, each one is just loaded with those brain-protecting compounds.
Okay, so this all sounds fantastic in theory, right? But the real question is, does it actually work? To find out, researchers put it to the test with a big clinical trial.
This study, it was called the Direct Plus trial, had about 300 people in it. They were split into 3 different groups. You had one group on a standard healthy diet, another on the classic Mediterranean diet, and the third group was on this new green version.
And we're not talking about some quick 2-week challenge here. Nope. The researchers followed everyone for a full 18 months. And that long time frame is so important, because that's how long it can take for real, measurable changes to start happening in your body. So how in the world do you measure brain aging without, waiting decades? This is where the researchers got really clever. Instead of just relying on memory tests, they looked for specific biomarkers right in the blood. They were tracking these 2 proteins, Galectin-9 and Decorin. You can kind of think of them as rust that builds up in the brain and makes it age faster. So the big question was, could this diet help clear some of that rust out?
And here's the big reveal. After those 18 months, the group on the green Mediterranean diet had lower levels of those 2 rust proteins compared to everyone else. This is huge. It suggests the diet was having a real, direct biological impact on how the brain ages.
Okay, the science is pretty convincing, right? But what does this actually mean for us? Like for our grocery shopping and what we cook for dinner? Well, the good news is you don't have to completely flip your life upside down to start getting these benefits. And I love this quote from dietitian Monique Richard, because it just says it all. It's not about perfection, right? It's about making those small, meaningful changes. So here are 4 super simple, totally doable ways to start. First, maybe swap out 1 meat dish a week for something with beans or lentils. Easy. Second, try making green tea your default drink instead of something sugary. Third, grab a handful of walnuts for a snack. It's that easy. These are just simple swaps that can really add up over time.
So what's the big picture here? What should we really take away from all this? Let's see what the experts have to say.
The study's co-lead author, Dr. Annette Mayer, points out just how powerful this kind of research is. By looking at these proteins, she says, we get a dynamic window into brain health. Basically, we can see these biological changes happening long before any symptoms like memory loss might even appear. And that's a game changer.
And this next part, this is what's so empowering. Dr. Jasdeep Hundal puts it perfectly. Look, we can't change our genes, right? But our diet, That's something we can change. She calls it a modifiable risk factor, which is just another way of saying it's something we actually have control over. It gives us a way to take an active role in our own brain's future.
Now, we've got to be realistic here. The experts are the first to say that we need more research, especially with more diverse groups of people. And it's so important to remember that diet, while it's a huge piece of the puzzle, it's not the only piece. Things like getting enough exercise, good sleep, and keeping stress in check. They're all just as crucial for a healthy brain.
I really think this is a perfect way to sum it all up. The whole idea is that simple and that powerful. You're basically making an investment in your future brain health.
So that just leaves one last question for you to think about. After hearing all this, what's one small green swap you could maybe make today? Because your future self will definitely thank you for it.